Radio Week 5 days of awards.
5 days of awards.
Inspirations and solutions.
Inspirations and solutions.
Radio Week.
Radio Week 5 days of awards.
5 days of awards.
Inspirations and solutions.
Inspirations and solutions.
Radio Week.
And we are here again for the last session of the day, Margaret, with David Systems.
That's right. And they're going to look at the human side of tech and the importance of partnerships to drive innovation forward. And that basically ties into the theme we've been speaking about today. So that's perfect. I want to welcome Bruno Tezena Dumoncel, the CEO of NETIA. Benjamin Schwendt, he's the head of APAC operations for NETIA. Dave Watson is senior director of marketing for David Systems. And Asaf Ehrlich is content marketing manager for David. Now, I'd like to say thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow.
Yeah, I think we'll be here again tomorrow with a new program. Please check on connectonair.com the program. We will program all the sessions on YouTube tonight, so it will be up for tomorrow morning, and you will be able to go through, of course, every content of the day on the program of Connect on Air or on the Red Tech YouTube channel, which is brand new. So you can go there, join, and subscribe to our new YouTube channel for this Radio Week. Thank you very much, Margaret, for this day. It was very interesting. And tomorrow we're here again.
We are. So we'll catch y'all tomorrow. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Ciao, ciao.
Radio Week 5 days of awards.
5 days of awards.
Inspirations and solutions.
Inspirations and solutions.
Radio Week.
For Radio Week, we are here with David Systems and NETIA. We are sister companies, cousin companies. You decide your words. But we have been working together. And this is the topic that we are going to address at this talk. But how to work together, and of course the human side of technology. As you know, we are in the midst of some of the terrible, great, you decide event of our lifetime. The pandemic has changed a lot of how we use technology. A lot of advancement has been happening in the field, but we should never forget the human part of all of this. And this is something we've been dealing with, and we want to bring this discussion to you. We are going to start with something that we call a catch-up. With something that Dave, Senior Director of Marketing at David Systems here, is doing with CEO of NETIA, Bruno. So maybe you guys can introduce yourselves.
Yeah, I'm Dave from David. And I think Asaf got my title pretty much correct, Senior Director of Marketing. And we're trying to figure out here with David is how to focus our business planning and development efforts a bit differently. How do we start off with the story, the business goals, and move on from there?
On to you, Bruno.
Hi, Asaf. Thank you for taking care of this recording. Thank you very much. We're talking quite regularly with Dave. Our main focus is not to try to understand how to get our two companies working together, because that's it's not anymore a huge issue. There is still here and there sometimes the renowned not invented here syndrome, and it's not always very easy to get developers to work together when they don't have the same culture. But what we are focusing on with Dave is, more interestingly, how to work together with our customers and with all the levels of decision in our customers to make sure our user experiences are perfectly matching the objectives of the users, and to make sure also that the customer, as a radio broadcaster, also is meeting their objective in terms of audience and satisfaction of the audience.
So, Bruno, you already said it pretty well about working together, the human aspect of it, the goals. What are the goals exactly? You already started saying this, so I'm going to bring it back to Dave. Dave, what are the goals exactly at the human side of technology?
Well, what I would say is that most our customers are typically public radio broadcasters, private as well. And what they want to do typically is maximize the information and entertainment experience for their audience in audio format. They also want to be able to keep that audience in their branded networking. So with the advent of online and digital and whatnot, you've gone the ability to keep your content in the branded network within your radio station is really broadened. So it used to be just broadcast. Now it could be podcast. It could be smart speaker. It could be YouTube. It's endless of what it can do. So what we want to do is understand at that perspective with the customer at a business level, okay, where to hit those goals in those areas, and then go from there. So start the story with at that point of what do you want to be able to achieve. Then we want to kind of find the pain points, and then we want to kind of go through the discovery of like, oh, here's a good way to, here are the possibilities of we solve it, rather than typically it's been the other way around.
Understandable.
And those are a lot of the discussions that Bruno and I have, is how do we do that most effectively?
So in this by company discussion, something that often comes a lot in our discussions, of course, is the topic of use cases. Use cases, as this is our way of thinking human. Let's call it like this. Bruno, what is your take on the sense of use cases? So how do we actually get more involvement? How do we interact more on the human side of things and use cases? How do you do it at NETIA?
Well, I think the main takeaway I would have in the last 2 years, and especially with the confinement and this pandemic, that changes the game quite a bit. The main takeaway is that you have to love your customers' problems. Sometimes we create pain points, but if you want them to get involved in talking to you of use case and to speak to them as something they actually want to achieve now, and that it's difficult or problematic for any type of reason, and they want to solve the issue. So when you start having an interest in the actual problem that they have today, not focusing on wow effect in 3 years down the line with a huge innovation that people will not see coming. It's exactly the contrary of that. It's what is your problem today and how can we solve it quickly? And so that's how we, at least at NETIA, that's how we try to envision our development in the future. It's always trying to go step by step, by small steps, but making sure every single step we take is a good step for our users and a good step for the audience. And that it will be an impact quite quickly. You know, the last product we developed, it was with a customer in France, a big customer in France, and it was during the pandemic to help journalists work at home. Of course, it was a very new subject for them. You know, a journalist could work mainly in their studio, and then a bit with specific equipment, they could work also on the field, but at home, where a journalist would work from home, maybe. And all of a sudden, it was the opposite. They had to. So we had to find a way quickly to provide something. And so that's it's a perfect example of the type of working together on the community.
This is a great example. Dave, this relates also to a discussion that we're having sometimes about how things work or what can you do with it. What's your take on that?
Right. Well, exactly. I think what typically, I would say even the industry goes in and says, oh, this is how this works. And our classic example is do you want a 4-bit, 4 centimeter bit, or do you want a 4 centimeter hole? And we say, oh, the 4 centimeter bit does this and this and this, and somebody really wants a 4 centimeter hole, or their problem might be what's behind that whole. And what we need to do is concentrate on what it can do for the customer, or what it can do, or how does that translate to the audience experience? Again, going back to those, business goals, and that's where we want to be able to concentrate. So when Bruno gave his example for working at home, that's where more of the focus and where the focus is on what it can do for the customer. How does it solve their problem? How do we love their problem together? How do we embrace their pain point together?
This is another aspect of this question that is, one could argue, it's a specialty of B2B companies, So you have people building, and you have people selling, and you have people promoting, and you have different departments, and the product is so specialized that you dive deep, and sometimes maybe too deep. So that means working together is actually something that you need to do internally as well. What is your take on that, Bruno? I'll bring it to you, Bruno, and then Dave. How do you look at that?
Well, the example of what we did with this French customer was we made sure that people conceiving the tools and people using the tools were as close as possible together in one same work. So because the customer is a big company, doesn't mean we have a selection of 150 users, but you try to have enough of a sample of various people to make sure that everything you do is not something that comes from the mind of whether is the project leader on the technical team. It's really something where everybody has got to go together. And it's the same thing within the organization of NETIA, where we also got a developer in the group to work with the people. And shortening all those lines that you were saying, people developing, people charting what is the product roadmap, and people promoting the product, all that has been shortened into very simple organization, where you have someone who is more taking care of the client relation and someone more taking care of the development side of things, the more technical side of things, and they work together with the users themselves. So it's one team that work together on how to evolve a product.
So maybe the biggest point of working together is actually eating your own dog food, as we say a lot, is like implementing internally. This is interesting, and of course I'll put this to Dave. And narrowing the problem is that we always say we build stuff that we sometimes don't use, or don't have people use, or don't have contact to the people who use it. And this is basically the same question. Moving to you, Dave.
Yeah, I thought Bruno's answer was fantastic. There's nothing really for me to add on top of that. I think Bruno's answer was very good. And
that's very good. That's very good. And actually, this is a great segue to talking about examples. Now, I want to give you an example of how we work together. I want to tell you about a project we call it WD3. It doesn't have a name yet, but it's simply a project where David as a whole voluntarily gathered people from different departments to work on a project. And the goal was to bring a prototype as fast as possible. When we're talking as fast as possible, I'm talking from 0, 1 month later, we are having something that we can use. Where people, myself and marketing, but also developers, programmers, end users, and different individuals simply gathered use cases and built something around the concept of actual pain points, actual problems to address right now in this pandemic. Problems that are relevant to some of you probably. And the idea was to deconstruct hierarchies or departments and work together as a team, even though some of these people would usually not work together on a normal day-to-day basis. And we are very, very happy with the result. We have we wouldn't call it a product, but a prototype that is actually working. And a prototype that is working and answering the use case to a very high degree of accuracy. A use case that is also very relevant for today.
Oh, what I was going to say was what's exciting about that is that what we did is we solved it at an internal level. So we are using it internally. We use it it allowed us to kind of eliminate 2 steps in our current workflow when we do our internal podcasts, which wasn't even like kind of an original use case, but it was a problem that we had. We figured out we could find it out. And what's more exciting is we've torn down the walls internally and to the customer to kind of combination with the customer. So that's what's going on with that, with the code name WD3. That's what's going on with it right now. So it's exactly what we've been talking about, and that's what's very exciting about it.
Exactly. And just to pinpoint the use case, while there are a lot of ways to record podcasts remotely, the virtual experience of a studio, to bring the experience of a studio and the control that an enterprise level software would have in such an environment doesn't exist yet, or at least not to this type of simplicity, and how it's scalable and how a bigger enterprise could win from having such a software. And this is something that we got by not only working together with different stakeholders within the company in different departments, but also to listening to the problems of customers, listening to the problems of the end users that are experiencing right now. And this is, we're very happy with the results. So this would be one example of working together internally. Now, I would like to give another example, moving to you, Benjamin. Benjamin, you're working at NETIA. You're in Australia right now. It's pretty late, so we won't keep you that much longer there. So so you're going to talk a little bit about your experience working together with David and other customers. Take it away.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Asaf. Yeah, working together with David, well, it's been something we have been like developing a little bit further so that we can of course, profit of each other experience, so that we don't, so that we can leverage, especially on like some technical topics that we have already encountered. But yeah, just going back on what was said before about not starting by the functionality and not starting by the technical angle, but more by the actual need. I mean, we can't emphasize enough how much just what happened recently has put like a lot of stress on how we have been how we had like all our customers had to quickly reorganize. And yes, indeed, we are started by the need because, you know, in a few months, as Bruno explained, and that's been the case in France, so that's been also the case out here. We had to really address what was the need and what like actual people really needed to continue to go out there, and that's something we've been trying to work together, starting by their actual needs, so they can continue going to air rather than just going by, oh, listen, I get that wonderful new technologies that would be going over IP. We were just going, well, let's just try to work together so that it continue to work. And that the technology followed. Sometimes it was something super sophisticated, and sometimes it was something just super simple. But what was more important is that, yeah, eventually we achieved together.
What was the specific, let's say, value that you see in that kind of work? Was the use case more present, or was it a better experience in general? Do you have any way to pinpoint that, or to be more specific?
From
your experience, of course, but we're not talking about hard science here, you know.
No, yeah. Starting from use cases as to what we're doing as far as well, typically, how can I continue to do a radio from home now that I can't move around? That was just like, you know, the most use cases that everybody has had to experience. Here we have replaced, you know, whatever you do to the office by radio and broadcast quality, and a lot of people are gonna listen to. But yeah. Use cases.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's pretty interesting. And this was your experience throughout the entire pandemic, or there was maybe an adjustment phase, you know, starting at, because I know I remember working even before the pandemic with you and Albert. Albert is another colleague from David Systems. NETIA and David are working together even before the pandemic, of course. Did something change since then in your way of work, let's say with David even?
Well, with David, given that we're already used to work like that, well, obviously we can't really get to meet each other as much as we used to. But no, we already had like that spirit of working together and more or less the framework in place. So for that bit, it just sort of just demonstrated that like what we had out there was workable.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. And any take on the discussion with Dave and Bruno? Do you agree, disagree? Because, I mean, you do a lot of building and talking. So you're having both hats.
Yeah. Well, as I said, like going from the other angle, again, not starting from the technical tool, but like going the other way around is definitely what I would be 100% with them.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Okay.
Okay.
I would just add one thing. I know that in the way we were organized before, it was very difficult for Benjamin to understand how the needs he would collect from his customer were actually taken care of within the NETIA production department. There was a process, and so he would enter things in the process and hope for the best for it to come out. He would have probably provisional planning and things like that, but not a real clue of how easy or difficult it was happening or not happening. Now with the new way we organize, if he's got a subject that's taken care of, he also has someone directly from the production team that's close to the subject and close to the customer with him, so at least this communication is a lot more fluid, and it makes everybody's life easier, even during the process of delivery.
Interesting. Well, I would like to actually conclude this with a different discussion. So we've been talking recently for our next customer conference about the idea of wherever you are, where you are. We have different segments of how this connects to today's world because we're all at home, but the needs have not necessarily always changed. You still need to do more. You still need to be efficient with what you have. Dave, I want to bring this to you, but we'll do around here. How do we conclude this? What's the next steps?
This is a function of the discussions, and it gets back to what we originally were talking about in terms of goals, and basically how does the audience stay within the station's brand, within the radio's brand, with all the different delivery methods. So we said wherever you are, and then we said, oh no, it's more about where you are, which was ironic because I go, I've heard that, and it's because I have a 6-year-old daughter, and I have to listen to Moana every day. So the one thing about homeschooling that's nice is that I don't have to be in the car listening to Moana songs every day, but we listen to where you are. But essentially that's what it comes down to. So we have two, different parts of the equation that we're always trying to address. The audience. So the audience, how do we deliver content and the right content where they are, where he or she is, however you want to pronoun it. So they can be in all these different delivery areas, podcast, broadcast, smart speakers, YouTube, however. And then we have it's a double entendre. We also have to think about it from at a end user level, be it a journalist, a sound engineer,
end user,
I'm forgetting,
journalist could be.
No, I had journalist. Begins with administrator, administrator. However, it is, and we have to be able to deliver where they are too. So now it's home office or virtualized studio or virtual studio. There's all these different ways of how we go about doing that, and it's always about of how can we do that in a secure way, how can we do it in a flexible way, how can we do it in an efficient way, and that's kind of the where you are equation. So it's very easy as a statement, but then the execution, and then that's the problems that we have to take on. So those are where we're trying to address those problems.
That is very relevant And actually, before I move on, so another example that I just have here is for working together is our audience participation tool, which is something I can actually show, and it's actually being used by one of our customers. Very simple tool where when you press a button and it's recording and can be embedded in any any website or any way to really quickly ingest content, user-generated content or other types of content in this web editor to your system, which was developed in 1 week with, again, myself and a developer, which we don't usually work together. It was kind of a gig, let's call it like this, in the beginning of the pandemic. Good example of working together, and you can see on the screen more from this audience participation tool.
It's important what you just showed us, because for the last 10 years, we've been talking about at-a-what things, anytime, anywhere, any device, always thinking about the audience. Our program, our service should be available to them anytime, anywhere, any place. It was not really connected to the content production. But that's what's changing now. The new paradigm is still at-a-what, but it's not just for audience, it's also for the people that are conceiving and preparing the service.
Very well said.
I was going to say it's content production, but it's also content distribution.
Yeah.
And then it comes down to the use cases. Is it as simple like, we want to take a show and we want to make it into a podcast, or do we want to take part of the show and then make that into atomized content? How quickly can someone do it, and what technical knowledge do they have?
When I want to contribute to any kind of audiovisual production,
yes,
I want to be able to do it anywhere, anytime, with any device.
Flexibility.
At the beginning, I can't prepare for hours and days, a huge operation, and sometimes I'll just go out in the street and I need to do something now. And I just have a mobile phone. Very well, I can do it from my mobile phone. And if I can do it, if I can do whatever I want, then probably, and I think that's a new goal.
Definitely, flexibility.
For the audiences, it's done already. It's there. There is a lot of portals, podcasts, broadcasts, whatever. A lot of business model, paying, free, commercials, no commercials. But on the content production, contribution side, there is still a lot to do before we are really in a position to say, yeah, you can do it anywhere, anytime.
That's very important. That's very important what you're saying, because, we're all talking about the pandemic now, but the ramifications are still going to hit us in the future. So it's not going anywhere, even if it's done. It's very important to specify this. And of course, let's conclude this with Benjamin. You're the last one.
Yeah. I just wanted to say that, it's not quite there, but it definitely gave a huge boost to actually have that production experience that you are comfortable with everywhere, at the very least in your bedroom. And that's what we're trying to achieve, so that everybody can stay safe, and so that the audience can still enjoy their everyday broadcast.
That's very well said. The use case, the human side of it, the end user side, which is our goal. That's very nice. Okay, guys, I want to thank you very much for this discussion. Very interesting. And of course, thanks for RadioWeek for having us. I want to thank you all. Bruno, CEO of NETIA, Dave, Senior Director of Marketing at David Systems, Benjamin, there in Australia, also NETIA, and myself, I'm Asaf from David Systems. And until then, I wish you all stay healthy, and we'll catch you later. Ciao. Thank you.
Thank you, Asaf.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
RadioWeek 5 Days of Awards.
5 Days of Awards.
Inspirations and Solutions.
Inspirations and solutions.